What is up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Guarani Vision, the first ever podcast dedicated to Paraguayan football in English. As always, I'm Roberto Rojas, and joining me my two great co-hosts, Fede Perez and Ralph Hannah. And guys, here we are, another episode of Guarani Vision. We're on the final days of the month. The Apertura has officially begun. We saw two games for all the 12 teams participating in the tournament begin. And obviously, it's such a special moment when you look at these sort of tournaments and, these leagues in the way of like, all right, what impressions can be made, what kind of conclusions can be made, and even overreactions. You also see that sometimes from some teams that you don't know like what could happen in terms of what to expect from these teams. And I think it's always good that like sometimes a champion is not determined in the first 2 days, 2 games of the tournament. Definitely not relegation, and definitely not a manager being sacked. We haven't had that as of yet, but. It's been impressive. It's been impressive. But before we get into anything else, I do have to shout out Mr. Federico Perez and wish him a happy birthday. Happy birthday, Fede.
Happy
Obviously, it's a special
birthday!
moment to record on your birthday. It doesn't happen a lot. I think it's happened to me, or I don't know if Ralph has done it well, but nevertheless, happy birthday, Fede. May you get more wiser as you get much older, and obviously, hopefully you enjoy this beautiful weekend of matches in the Paraguayan League.
Hi, Roberto. Hi, Rob. Thank you so much, guys. It's great to be back for another episode. It's great to share my birthday with everyone that's listening, always to Guarani Vision. You guys are part of my life also, so it's great to be here. I think I've had several birthdays these last 5, 6 years that we've been doing Guarani Vision here with you guys. So it's always special. It's always a nice day when it's your birthday. You're always a little bit more happy. People are writing you and sending you messages and stuff like that. I love that. So obviously, we got a whole bunch of stuff to talk about today on our episode because the football has officially begun in the Paraguayan League. We had a very tight calendar, we must say, right? 3 games in just one week. We're going to get more this weekend. So it's been special, really, with a couple of teams that have started out really well. I've seen tight matches. I haven't seen yet one candidate taken away, but we'll see as the games go by which team looks the strongest. Cerro, the last champion, has started out pretty well. Olimpia with a lot of doubts. The big teams, Libertad, the last Apertura champion, they won their first game at home just a couple of days ago. So it was a really good, I would say, last 7 days of football. We are finally underway, and we're going to talk about everything that's been going on, obviously following our Paraguayans abroad also because they haven't stopped at all, right? Especially the ones that have been playing in Europe. I'm really happy, guys, about what I'm seeing from Julio Enciso. I think he scored his first goal in the French league, right? We've seen that he scored and had assists already in the League's Cup in France. So it's really nice to see this Julio Enciso starting to take over in his team as we're obviously following every Paraguayan this year. It's very important as we're heading into the next World Cup. We're going to talk about this and much, much more.
Yeah, absolutely. And getting Ralph here, yeah, obviously we saw players like Ronaldo Martinez scoring for his new club Talleres, Damian Bobadilla scoring for São Paulo. Obviously talking about Enciso, yeah, his first goal in Liga. He's already got 6 goals to his name, which would be his best ever season right now in Europe. And given the fact that he's been there for a couple of years, yeah, we're starting to see some players really step it up. Adam Barreiro, he's been scoring for Fortaleza. You got to see what happens to him in his future. But there are some players that, Gabriel Avalos, he scored also the other day for Independiente. So, yeah, I guess, and, we're about a month month and a half away from the first friendlies of the year, the final friendlies before the World Cup, or at least the final, like, major ones. And a lot of these players are, yeah, trying to convince Gustavo Alfaro. We've seen Gustavo Alfaro also make the journey to a lot of these Paraguayan clubs. He's been at some of these games already in the first 2 games of the season. We saw him visit Cerro, we saw him visit Olimpia, we saw him visit Guarani, we saw him visit Libertad. And he's doing his tour like he's always done his tour in Europe and across the world. Actually, now he's doing it in the country, and yeah, he's making a list and making sure that whoever is on that list will be considered and keeping his tabs for the next month when those qual friendlies happen.
Yeah, that's right. It's all happening. And as Fede said, it's a tight calendar, it's tight games as well. So far in the Apertura, only one team has won by 2 goals, which was Cerro. All the other games have been either ties or 1 goal victory. So really like packing in good games, competitive games. And
even players in the local league hoping they might get a call up from Alfaro because, like you said, Roberto, he's been at those matches watching some of the players. I think there's a particular goalkeeper situation which we talked about before. That's one of the posts we talked in the last show about the striker, the number nine. So if somebody starts scoring goals, something might happen there. And so everybody, I think, is this beginning of the year, beginning of the season is a lot of excitement as people are trying to get their names on that special list from Alfaro, especially looking forward to the first friendlies in March, which is going to be the real indication of whether he's going to call up anybody new.
Absolutely. Fed, I'll go to you. I mean, I'm sure there is that sort of feeling that, and even from a goalkeeper perspective, that's always the big debate. I mean, we're seeing players like Gil obviously performing at San Lorenzo. We're also seeing, some players that maybe aren't playing. Gatito Hernandez is staying put at Cerro Porteño, but he hasn't been playing because we saw obviously Alexis Martin Arias playing. We saw the unfortunate injury of Aldo Perez from Guarani that, he wasn't going to be considered as the top goalkeeper, but he was in that sort of list. Does that open the spot for someone else? We saw Carlos Corleone made that move to Sao Paulo. Does it mean for someone maybe a wild card? Who knows? It feels open for so many, and we're still 5 months away from the World Cup, but it feels like every single moment. We were just talking before off the air before we got on that it's been hot in Paraguay. The start times have been kind of different in the league, and maybe and there's so many games been going on at the same time. We're already at our third game of the season. We're already in only 1 week in the season. That could make a team have players that are prone to injuries, and that could be a lot depending on where you are in the. I mean, knock on wood, obviously, but there is a big player that is going to get injured on this team. Then that opens the spot to someone else.
Yeah, I was thinking about this whole Alfaro tour and him going to different clubs and having the opportunity not just to see players right there as they practice really close by and also talk to their coaches, right? And probably get some details about the everyday and how they really take care of themselves. I mean, when you have that one-on-one with the coach that has the player every day, it's totally different. And you see that Alfaro does that. He did it in Europe last year. And now he's doing it in Paraguay, and obviously now that he's the coach that qualified us, that made us go back to a World Cup, everybody's obviously welcoming him with open arms. But we're seeing a couple of important pictures that I would save and I would have right there on my gallery just in case in March they're called up. And I'm talking about, I don't know, in Cerro Porteño, guys, I'm seeing Juan Manuel Iturbe killing it ever since last year. He could be one of those guys that might sneak in if somebody gets injured, just like you said, Roberto. I mean, it could happen. It's happened before in other World Cups when you lose an important player and you might need somebody that has experience, that has already played with the jersey, and somebody that's in a good spot, in a good moment. Juan Manuel Iturbe is one of those guys. Let's not forget he was top scorer of the Paraguayan League last season, so he's in top shape, and he's probably the difference maker in Cerro. I'm not saying he's gonna be called up, but maybe it could be a name to follow. The other big name in Olympia is Gaston Olveira. You mentioned the goalkeepers. Gaston Olveira will be available or eligible to play for the national team in February, and we have a friendly in March. Seems kind of a big coincidence. What do you guys think?
Are you are
This is
you are
a.
you playing conspiracy, Fed? Is that what you're trying to do? Do you feel like this has all been planned?
I think this is a name that's been going around about 2, 3 years now, guys. I mean, he's obviously always been playing in the Paraguayan League, always playing for Olympia. But Alfaro called Aldo Perez, and he played in Guarani, so he's definitely thinking that okay, the goalkeepers in the Paraguayan League might have enough to make it to the national team. He's Uruguayan. He's not fully Paraguayan, but he's done the best in his career here in Paraguay. He's been here forever. He's now a citizen. Now he has the opportunity to play for the national team. And Alfaro went straight to him and had a talk with him one on one in Olympia's practice. And everybody got the picture. And this could be one of the names, guys. I don't know if you want to see him in the national team. I don't know if you want to go for a younger Paraguayan goalkeeper, if he is the right one. But, with Gatito not playing, Gatito Fernandez not starting the year, he apparently is not going to change clubs. Apparently, he's going to stay in Cerro Porteño. This is a really weird one for me. But maybe Gaston Almeida might have his opportunity. As of right now, the goalkeeper spot belongs to Orlando Hill. He's been the goalkeeper these last games. I expect him to, again, in March, be the goalkeeper for the national team. But we got to look out for these names, for these guys that are hugging, that are taking pictures with Alfaro. They're trying to get on his ear. They're trying to convince him, hey, I want to play the World Cup.
I think there's with Olveira situation particularly, there's some kind of romanticism as well, right? Because a Uruguayan goalkeeper at Olympia, of course, Evo Almeida was of Uruguayan birth, and then of course he's just known as Paraguayan. No one really even considers him Uruguayan anymore because of so much time has passed, and another Olympia goalkeeper as well. So maybe some of that is also filling in as people get excited and thinking about this. But in terms of just quality, it's a good point. I mean, if Gatito Fernandez, while he's at Cerro, was in the national team, there's really, in theory, not a reason why Gaston Olveira couldn't be, because not last year, the year before, he was voted the best player in the whole league. Last year, he got the injury, missed a lot of time. Didn't look great when he came back from injury, but I think that was more. It's not like a loss of quality. It was more like, getting back into match fitness and that kind of thing. And also, Olympia had many problems with their defense, as we've seen. So if he has a good 3, 4 months now in this Apertura, there's no reason why he couldn't be considered, especially as we've just said, Aldo Perez and Gatito were called up while playing in Paraguay. So yeah, I wouldn't count it out. I wouldn't count it out. You never know what could happen.
Yes, it could obviously be, a lot going on in the next month, and we'll obviously keep our eyes on what's going on. But let's focus on what we've been seeing so far in the league, and we got to start with the champions. We got to start with Cerro Porteño because obviously, from their sort of perspective, it's been a wild first two games, I would say. Obviously, first game they took on Libertad, a big clash against a favorite, and obviously one of the teams that have won Aperturas in the past, and then 1-1. We saw Aliceda score thanks to an assist from the aforementioned Iturbe. But then, of course, in the 64th minute, a late Lex from an assist point of view, for Pachicaristo getting the assist from a corner, helping Gustavo Aguilar scored in the 64th minute. That ended up 1-1. And then in the second game against Sportivo Luqueño, Sportivo San Lorenzo being played in Capietá, Cerro Porteño took advantage really early on. They were up at 3-0 at one point. Blas Rivero scoring, really good connection with the fullbacks. Juan Iturbe scoring twice, once right at the stroke of halftime, and then another one in the 62nd minute. But then we saw some crazy goals after that. In a 5-minute span, we saw a penalty from Sportivo San Lorenzo, Jose Barrios scoring in the 72nd minute, and we saw Victor Cespedes scoring 5 minutes later. So it was already 3-2, and that means San Lorenzo were just one goal away from tying the game. But then, of course, Gabriel Aguayo scoring in stoppage time, literally the last kick of the game to end it 4-2. One of the impressions that I have, and I'll go to Ralph on this one first, that it's a Cedro side, and we saw obviously the names already been playing with like obviously Vegetti getting a start, we saw Mosquera being played, Christian Paredes, Kimovic. I mean, we were already seeing the new players come in for Jorge Bava, but you're not seeing, at least my first impression, that it's a Cedro side that's still a bit shaky. They're getting the one, they took leads in both games and they were unable to really take advantage of it throughout the entire game. We saw San Lorenzo pressure them, when it was 3-0 up and now it went to 3-2. We saw obviously Libertad tie it up. So it hasn't been the convincing Cerro Porteño performances to start off the season, don't you think?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, defensively, as you mentioned, they haven't kept clean sheets. They've taken leads and not necessarily looked comfortable, even in the San Lorenzo game, which really they do kill it off at the end. Partly because I thought Sergio Ortman with San Lorenzo wanted to play very attacking football throughout. They were like taking the game to Cerro. In fact, for much of the early part of the second half, they were the better team, and that's why they scored the 2 goals in the second half. So it's like you say, it's not been 100% convincing. The player we're still missing, remember, is Christian Paredes, who we mentioned last week, he isn't fully fit yet. So he's been playing Morel and Pirista Mota in central midfield. But I do wonder, like, will we see a little bit of a difference when Paredes comes in? And then what we also saw is in the Libertad game, I thought Chiquiase won the battle of the substitutes, right? Libertad got better after the substitutions. Cerro probably didn't, which is when he started bringing on the new players in a lot of cases. In the second game against San Lorenzo, he started with Vegeti up front. He made a change at fullback. Fabricio Dominguez came back in at right back because he had played Rodrigo Gomez. And so maybe there was a bit more stability from the start in that first game because you had your main striker, your big man starting the match. Whereas when he came on against Libertad, he didn't really look ready. I think he wasn't ready for some of the physicality, the contact. And so in that game, they did get pegged back. But overall, I mean, I think the strength you saw of Cerro is what Iturbe and Aliseda are doing. And remember, Aliseda this time, was it this time last year? Probably it was towards the beginning of the year when he first joined. It was like, oh, this guy, he's not fit. He's too fat, according to one person, one board member, right? And there was this thing of, oh, I don't know if you can use Aliseda much. Like he's just going to have to come occasionally off the bench and do some magic. Now he's started the games. He starts by scoring. He had a very good game against San Lorenzo as well, I thought. And you're like, he's only 25. He's played a lot of time in Switzerland. You've got Klimovic as well, who's about the same age, who's played Bundesliga. You have Iturbe is older, he's 32 now, but he's played Premier League, Champions League, Serie A. You're like, there's a lot of quality actually in this team, especially going forward, that I think they can take advantage of. The big question for me as Cerro Sofado is Vegeti. I mean, I haven't seen much from him that says, oh, he's gonna be the difference maker. He has these moments of quality with some of the touches and some of the link up he's trying to do, but he doesn't bring the kind of physical presence I was really expecting, and he might struggle a bit, I think, in the league if he's unable to hold the ball up a bit better, which I'm surprised by, having played in Brazil, which is also, of course, a hugely physical league.
Yeah, it hasn't been easy for Pablo Guedes. He got here and he had to get in the field right away, right? I mean, he didn't have that many practices with his new teammates. I think the chemistry, understanding each other is still not there. That would take, I believe, a couple of games. I don't know eventually when we're going to see the first goal from Begetti because people will start to get anxious, right? I mean, he came with that on his shoulders. I'm going to score a bunch of goals because I did it last year. So people are expecting me to do it again in a big team like Cerro Porteño, and they don't have that striker. So the goals have to come from Begetti or somewhere else. As of right now, they're coming from Juan Manuel Iturbe. He's the one that's starting out the year hot. They have a couple of injuries that I believe are important. Cecilio Dominguez is not available for the start of the season. I don't know when he'll be back. Gaston Jimenez, I believe, is another sensible injury that they have in the midfield. He was very important last year, I believe, with the ball, giving the team some football in that midfield. I think they don't have a player like him. Maybe Christian Paredes could be that player, that playmaker, a player that can put the ball for the forwards, a player that can make the team move around, like Pachi Carrizo did last year. I think they're going to need a player to take that role in certain games. And defensively is what, I've had my doubts, especially with this start. I mean, receiving goals in both games, not being able to keep a clean sheet. This is something that they're definitely going to have to try to work on, the balance of this team, and try to play 90 minutes in a good level, because that's what I believe they couldn't do in both games. I mean, for moments we saw what Cerro Porteño is capable of, but as of right now, after watching this team in 2 games, I believe they still got a whole bunch of stuff to work on, and eventually I think they'll get there to a Begetti, because this team needs to play for him. He needs to be the star of this team, scoring at least. So I think that's the thing right now for Jorge Baba, the head coach of Cerro Porteño, to work for the team to play for Pablo Begetti. That was your big gamble in this transfer market, and they're going to need his goals. No doubt about it, guys.
Yes, they definitely do, and they obviously will have to see what they do in the next game. Obviously it's obviously going to be interesting to see if they can continue that. As they take on Luqueño. They take on Luqueño on Monday. We got to talk about Olimpia as well, with Vitamina, really trying to coach this team into a good obviously them beating Guarani on the first day, beat them 2-1. A performance from obviously we saw the likes of Sebastian Ferreira, play well. Hugo Quintana as well, performing in the best way possible. I thought he was really good in that game. But then against Dos de Mayo, and a player that we shouted out, even though it ended a 1-1 draw, we did shout out, a player that Ralph. I think everyone will be talking about it now with Pedro del Valle. Certainly from an Olympia point of view, it's also been very unconvincing to say the least.
For Olympia, it's been two like very, what's the word, action-packed games, right? Because they get from 5 minutes to the game against Guarani, which could have been, a tough one. You have Coyote Rodriguez, who's back in Paraguay with that crossing ability that we know he has, puts the ball to Sebastian Pereira, scores a goal in 5 minutes. You're like, oh wow, okay, they're going to be good. Then Olympia gets the red card. Even on the red card, they managed to extend their lead against Guarani, which was impressive, and they run out winners. And then they have to travel up north to the Rio Parapiti and play Dos de Mayo, who have been very good at home. Traditionally, that's how they qualify for the Copa Libertadores, which we're going to talk about soon. And there is a much harder game. They finally get the chance on 50 minutes with Sebastian Ferreira stepping up from the penalty, and he misses the penalty. So then you're like, wait, this is the guy that's the goal scorer, and now he's missing penalties. So suddenly the doubt creeps in again, right? Um, they go behind, they equalize. Pedro del Valle puts them ahead, puts Dos de Mayo ahead, but it's ruled out. Um, but suddenly you're like in that, and that was a very action-packed second half, I suppose, is maybe not just the whole game, because all of that happens in the second half. And then yeah, you're left thinking, okay, I mean they beat Guarani, but they got off to that very good start, and then they've slipped up here. Has anything changed, or are we watching the same team we watched last year? And similar to Cerro, they haven't kept a clean sheet yet, so that's something they'll want to definitely keep an eye on. But yeah, going to Pedro del Valle, I mean, it was just great to see him. It was just one of those players I remember as I've always enjoyed watching him play, and then he did exactly what I remembered in that game against Olimpia. I mean, he had the goal disallowed, but I think he was like leading stuff like the Jules one, the key passes, all this kind of stuff. He was just everywhere, and he really was pushing Dos de Mayo forward in that home game. Where for them, I think that point serves them really well. That was a well-earned point and gives them a bit of confidence going into the Alianza Lima game, which we'll talk about soon.
Yeah, Olympia hasn't been wonderful in these two games. They played all right against Guarani, I would say, in that first half, especially if they're going to get goals from Sebastian Ferreira. The thing is, like Ralph mentioned in the second game, apparently was the downside of the team, missing that penalty. So one good game, one bad game for Seba Ferreira. He's definitely going to have competition if they bring another center forward, because as of right now, they don't have one in their squad. I mean, Alcaraz usually gets in there, gets game time, but he's not taking over. He's not scoring. He didn't end the year competing for that center forward spot. So as of right now, they really need Seba Ferreira to get hot, start scoring, be the leader offensively, I would even say, for this team, and get on the same page and get other players on the same page. Like Rodney Redes. Rodney Redes was called up to the national team last year, guys. And you look at him now, and I don't think he's even competing for a spot, even though he played as a starter in the first game, but he was taken out of the game at halftime. So the coach apparently is not 100% with this player. He brought in other type of players also in for those spots. So I think, eventually as the games go by, we're going to see this Olympia very differently, in the names at least. Obviously, they have a base of players. Gaston Albeiro is always going to be there. Hugo Quintana is always going to be there because he ended the year being probably the best Olympia player. And I believe he's the only one that has really maintained the level and can even take it up a bit more. And then you have the midfield where you don't know if you're going to see the the captain Richard Ortiz, or if you're gonna see Alfaro take over and play every game, it's not gonna be easy for him, because of the calendar and because of everything that Olympia needs from a center midfielder. So I think eventually he already did it against Dos de Mayo, putting Richard Ortiz in there, putting Alex Silva in there, the experienced players, the ones that are close to 40 years old, but you might need them. They take the pace down of the game, but you're going to need them. You're going to need the rotation, especially with a calendar that's going to have, I believe, 4 match days in between the weeks. So we're going to have a lot of tight games. We're going to have a very hard tournament for players, and watch out for injuries and stuff like that. That's why I believe, between the first game and the second game, he already mixed it up a lot, which was really weird from the fans, right, point of view, because they thought that against Guarani, okay, we saw something, let's repeat this, let's keep the team. And Vitamina Sanchez went a totally other way. He tried out other players. He even said in the press conference, I'm still trying out players. I want them to compete for the spot. And there's a whole bunch of players we are yet to see that Olympia hired. I eventually want to see what Brian Betamberri can do in this team, the Uruguayan that also came in this transfer market, the center back. You're having Gustavo Vargas there scoring a goal already for this team. He did it for Guarani last year. He scored a whole bunch of goals also in Libertadores. So he's a center back that can also score, which is very interesting. But defensively, it's been kind of rough for Olympia. Last year, Ralph mentioned it. They never had stability there. And they're starting off the year a bit sketchy also. I want to see which players can really take over in this squad. I believe Vitamina Sanchez is very far still from finding his starting 11. And I don't know how the patience is going to be with this team, just because of everything they've gone through these last years. It's been really hard for them, Roberto. They are the team that will have the pressure in every match.
And also a team that is under pressure is, of course, Guarani, because of these 2 games that they started. They haven't won. They lost, obviously, to Olympian, and they tried Trinidense yesterday. Is the pressure on for, Bernay's squad? I mean, it certainly looks that way in a way, Fede, that, you know, you feel as if though there is no identity on this team, and you think to yourself, okay, they need to like actually step it up if they still want to compete on the level to go and go for this title. Nacional, I think, has been great in that sense. We obviously saw them reinforce very well, and they've been starting very well. They're getting their wins against Portillo Luqueño, against San Lorenzo and Luqueño. Now, but they got those de Mayo coming up tomorrow. Then they got to play Olimpia Cerro Porteño. So it really is a yin and yang, you would say, for both Nacional and for Guarani.
Yeah, and the expectation is for one of those 2 teams to fight the title, right? To have the opportunity to go up against the big teams and have that long journey in the Apertura to the last weeks and have the opportunity to be champions. From what I saw from Guarani, these last 2 games has not been pretty, has not been good. And they're still missing Fernando Fernandez, which is a very important piece in that offense. He started the year injured, but he will eventually start playing. I believe in week 4, he'll probably start playing, from what I've been told. So they really need him. They have a young striker with Ivan Ramirez, who started scoring goals last year. This is a player that has also been kind of in the radar of the national team, but he needs to keep it up with his numbers, right? And it's going to look a lot better when he's alongside or playing at least with Fernando Fernandez, who is one of the historic players in this Guarani. I think he's going to take over once he's healthy, and he's probably the missing piece as of right now in this puzzle, in this new team that has a lot of young players. They brought back a lot of players also that were on loan. So I believe Victor Bernay is still trying to put it together. I think this team is still far away from what I actually expected and from where they were at the end of last year. And as of Nacional, they started the year really well, guys. I mean, 2 big games to start off the year to put the fans by their side, and they're catching people's attention, especially with the signings that they have. I mean, when you bring Roque Santa Cruz, it's because you want to do something, and Roque played both games, guys. In the middle of a lot of rotation for a lot of teams, Roque did not rotate. He's still being an example, no doubt about it, here in the Paraguayan League, and this is a player that you mentioned also, Ralph, and so happy to see him. It's not an age thing. It's being healthy. It's taking care of that body, and physically, Roque is up for the challenge.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, Nacional, the only side that won both games, so they are top of the table. And you mentioned Roque starting both matches, and also, of course, is the new coach Felipe Jimenez that came in that did so well at Dos de Mayo. So he's now able to like transfer those skills down to Nacional, and we're seeing that great start already. I mean, on a note with Guarani, the thing about Guarani was always their squad was so thin and inexperienced, but you had a few players to call on, and so Fede mentioned Fernandez, who's injured at the moment, that they can't call on. And of course, Willy Mendieta. Willy Mendieta left. He's gone back to Rubio New, where he started, he kind of started at Libertad, but he used to play on loan at Rubio New. And he's got a great goal from a free kick and an assist in his first two games. So you're like, oh, Guarani might be thinking, well, if we still have Willy Mendieta, we might have found the goal against Trinidad. So they drew that match 0-0. So they've lost a few key experienced players, and that's really what Guarani don't have. So that's been difficult. Just one player I wanted to shout out as well, because Recoleta have got the striker Alan Wilk, who Alan Wilk was at Olympia, was one of the top scorers in the under 20s, I think, Sudamericana or something. Then he like went off to Mexico. He came back to Emiliano, didn't get many games under Roberto Nani last year, but he started the season really well. 2 goals in 2 games, both very similar goals, like running into the channel onto a through ball and finishing very well. And so if he can keep that up, that will give Recoleta a huge boost, as they're obviously always fighting for survival. They managed it last season. They've got to do it again this season. And so with those kind of goals, that could really help Recoleta.
Yeah, no, it was going to be a really interesting sort of, next few weeks. And, I guess Ralph, heading into now for those de Mayo, obviously, we just mentioned them. They'll be starting the Copa Libertadores, over there in Pedro Juan Caballero at the Estadio Rio Parapiti, taking on Alianza Lima. And, this is a special moment for them. I mean, what do you expect from them heading into this first ever Copa Libertadores game in their history?
Yeah, it's a huge moment because, like you say, first time in the Copa Libertadores. They did qualify last year for the Sudamericana, but it's so sad the way the Sudamericana is at the moment, that your first game is against a team from your own country. So they played Guarani in Asunción and they lost. So it's like a regular league game, that Sudamericana match. So this is the big one now, right? Alianza Lima is a huge team in South America in terms of support. It's one of the best supported teams. They're coming to, well, we're debating off air, right? Is it the countryside, not the countryside, but the deep Paraguayan, far away from Asuncion, in the Rio Parapiti, which has hosted big games before because it was built for the Copa America back in 1999. So it has hosted, big games before, but the first time ever for Dos de Mayo that they play a competitive game against a non-Paraguayan team, and they get to do it there. And it's a really incredible story for this side, that in 2005 they won the Intermedia, and that was the first time they ever got to play in the top division, 2006. So only 20 years ago, right? They've been around since the 30s. I can't remember when it is, but it's around like 2013. They're back down in what is the Nacional B. They're not even in Intermedia. They've like crashed all the way. They finally get out from there like 2017, 2018, back to Intermedia. And then they finally got back up to Primera just a few years ago. So it's been really like a topsy-turvy 2 decades, where they had the high of coming to Primera, everything crashed down, like the floor fell in beneath them. They went down 2 divisions, managed to get themselves back up. And then it was through Felipe Jimenez, who's now not their coach, but he really got them into the Sudamericana, and then this time the Libertadores. A lot based on home form. So it's this first game at home that's going to be so key for them if they can somehow pull off the result and get past Alianza Lima. The coach now is Eduardo Ledesma, he was a very nice, technical, good midfielder in his day. He played for the national team. He came up recently. He went viral recently because Dani Alves of Brazil was pictured wearing a Paraguay shirt. And everyone didn't click at first until Eduardo Ledesma, he filled in the blanks. He said, that was me. I swapped with Dani Alves at a time when he was playing in Lanús and he was getting called up. So Ledesma has a lot of experience, played for the national team. While he was at Lanús, he played a lot of Libertadores football, I think 3-4 seasons. So hopefully he can bring some of that for Dos de Mayo, have this, this huge match under the lights on Wednesday night. And I think it's going to be a great moment because that stadium is 25,000 capacity. I mean, it's a huge stadium, rarely gets filled out. It wasn't full against Olympia, I noticed. But I mean, there's a chance for the whole kind of area, the whole community to go and see Copa Libertadores football for the first time, which was definitely, it was 10 years ago, it was unthinkable that they would be in that position. So it's a very cool story.
Yeah, and I think it's possible, guys, to leave behind Alianza Lima. After from what I saw from this Dos de Mayo against Olympia, after seeing a player that Ralph already highlighted before the season even started, Pedro del Valle, who kind of took over in this team offensively in this game. And seeing Cesar Castro, this is another player that I love, the left back. He's one of the leaders in this team. The goalkeeper stood out in the game against Olympia. He stopped that penalty that we were talking about. So I think they just got the boost that they needed to play a big team like Alianza Lima. And they put the fans by their side, with a good game. They almost won it. I mean, Pedro Valle scored a great goal. Unfortunately, it was taken off. But they showed their stuff and they showed that they're ready. So if you're on the other side, if you're on the Alianza Lima side, you're thinking, hey, this team is not that small. They got a stadium that has 20,000 seats. They have their stadium ready. They've been progressively getting better, just like Ralph mentioned, their history coming from Intermedia, trying to build this new team again, the whole philosophy behind it, maintaining, the assistant coach of the coach that took them to this stage, Libertadores. They're going to play Libertadores for the first time. Pedro Juan Caballero, not the safest city in Paraguay. We'll see in that sense how these big Libertadores, they play at night, 9:30. I believe the game is going to be played. So, but it's a good hour for people, because I believe, I've seen a lot of games that have been played in the afternoon and not a lot of people in the stands. But when they play at nighttime, it's totally different, guys. They might even fill the stadium, I believe, and I think that's now the big task for them. You have your stadium, CONMEBOL, the FA helped you out to put it under, to fill CONMEBOL's demands. You're playing right away, which is something that it was impossible a couple of years ago. Take advantage of that situation. Olympia has never been able to beat this team in Pedro Juan Caballero. The big teams always have problems going to Rio Parapiti. It's a big, long journey over there. So I think Alianza Lima is gonna go up against a good team, and they're gonna feel the pressure of playing an away game. The fans are gonna make them feel it, and I'm definitely rooting for the Gallo of Dos de Mayo. I'm definitely gonna be rooting for the Rooster this time. We want to see this team go through. We want to see the first Paraguayan team hit it right away in the Libertadores. Dos de Mayo is starting their trip against Alianza Lima, the Peruvian team that had a lot of trouble in that locker room, as I was reading during this preseason.
Yeah, although they did beat Inter Miami in a friendly the other day, so maybe they are on some good momentum. They're beating Messi and company. But yes, it'll be a big game. Obviously, rooting for the Rooster. I love that, Fede. It's a good motto to use, and we'll obviously be keeping an eye on what happens in the next few games of the Apertura, and in this game in the Copa Libertadores, as we close out another great episode of Guarani Vision. For myself, Roberto Rojas, the birthday boy Fede Perez, and Ralph Hannah. Thank you so much for listening in. See you soon.